Introduction. This is a story about a man who became a symbol of horror for an entire city. A story not for the faint of heart. A story about how crime takes root, how it is born in a man's mind, how gradually, step by step, a domestic maniac becomes a murderer. This is the story of Oleg Viktorovich Rylkov, a man who was called the Togliatti Ripper. On his account, 12 confirmed murders. On his account, more than 37 rapes of minor children. On his account, robberies, thefts, tortures, and abuse. But the main thing, this is a story about how society missed a maniac. How he lived among us, how he worked with us, how he was our neighbor, and no one suspected anything. This is a story about the psychology of crime, a story about motivation, a story about a maniac who cut organs out of his victims and took them as trophies. Prepare yourselves. This will be long. This will be detailed. This will be the truth. Part 1. Childhood and Psychological Formation. Birth and Soviet Childhood. December 21st, 1966. The city of Zelenodolsk. Girl from the neighboring house. The girl told her mother. The mother told Oleg's parents. And here is where something happened that probably influenced his entire life. His parents covered it up. They said it was just child's play, that Oleg was too small to understand what he was doing. No punishment followed. No psychologist was consulted. This was the first signal. The first warning sign that no one heard. Teenage years and sexual deviation. In adolescence, Oleg becomes increasingly withdrawn. He experiences even more loneliness. He hides even more from people. But at the same time, his sexual deviation forms. He becomes interested in pornography, regular pornography. Then more violent material. Then sexual content involving children. His classmates didn't know this. His teachers didn't know this. His parents didn't know this, or didn't want to know. Oleg concealed it, carefully, cryptically. He developed a mask of normalcy already in adolescence. By day, an ordinary schoolboy. By evening, a man with distorted sexuality who collects obscene materials and fantasizes about children. But no one knew about this, because Oleg was charming and quiet. Army and transformation. In 1985, Oleg is drafted into the Soviet Army. 2 years. Service proceeded normally. No incidents, no conflicts. Colleagues remembered him as a quiet, calm, sometimes strange guy. One notable detail that his fellow soldiers later recalled: Oleg was obsessed with physical strength. He wanted to be stronger. He wanted to have power over others. He practiced combat techniques. He repeatedly asked how to break arms correctly, how to strangle a person. This was carefully noted, but it didn't seem dangerous to anyone. All young men are interested in combat sports. Everyone wants to be stronger. But in the context of who Oleg Rylkov would become, these details take on sinister meaning. In the army, Oleg also began to understand his sexual deviation. This place where power and submission dominate. This place where cruelty is cultivated. This place that could be used by a person already inclined toward sadism. Return and search for meaning. In 1987, Oleg returns from the army. He is 20 years old. Ahead lies life. Ahead lies work, family, children. Ahead lies an ordinary fate. But Oleg feels emptiness. He feels that something is wrong. He feels that his sexual orientation is not what society needs. Nevertheless, he decides to appear normal, and he travels to Togliatti. Part 2. Togliatti and Double Life. New beginning at Autovaz Togliatti, the largest automobile factory of the Soviet Union, RSFSR, Volga, a working-class city where tens of thousands of people live who came here for work, for money, for a new life. Oleg gets a job at Autovaz as a sheet metal worker. And here, Oleg shows himself as an ideal employee, responsible, punctual, conscientious, polite, charming. Colleagues respect him. Management praises him. They recommend him for promotion. At work, Oleg masks himself perfectly. Attempt at creating a family. In 1988, Oleg marries. His wife's name is Yekaterina, an ordinary Soviet woman. She works. She dreams of a family, of children, of a quiet life. And in 1989, their daughter is born. It seemed like everything was going according to plan. It seemed like Oleg had avoided the mine. It seemed like he would become an ordinary worker, a family man, a father. But this was an illusion. Because on the first night of their marriage, Yekaterina understood. Something is wrong. Oleg displayed perverted sexual desires. He demanded that his wife fulfill his fantasies. Harsh fantasies. Fantasies connected with sadism, with humiliation, with pain. Yekaterina resisted, but Oleg insisted. Arguments became increasingly fierce. He began to threaten. He became aggressive. His wife was afraid. The birth of their daughter changed nothing. The arguments continued. The threats continued. And Yekaterina noticed something strange. How Oleg looked at their daughter, at her body, at her innocence. Something in his gaze frightened her. Robberies. In the early 90s, the Soviet Union collapsed. Anarchy began. In the streets, garbage, drunk people, unpredictability. In this chaos, Oleg finds opportunity. Around 1991, he begins committing apartment robberies. By day he works. By evening he hunts. His method is simple and effective. He walks through residential areas. He looks at windows. If he sees an open window, if he sees disorder, if he understands that the apartment is empty, he acts. He enters through an open door or window. He quickly surveys the place. He takes money, jewelry, alcohol, a little food. Never anything valuable, never anything that can be traced. By some estimates, only in 1991 to 1992, Rylkov committed several dozen robberies. Perhaps there were more, perhaps there were fewer. No one knows exactly. The police didn't connect these robberies. There's no unified picture. There's no single perpetrator. First sexual incident. The pipe. 1991, summer. Oleg sees a small girl in the yard. She is about 9 years old. She is walking a dog. Something about her helplessness arouses Oleg. For several days he watches her. He sees when she is alone. He sees when no one is watching. And one day, he acts. He enters the entryway after the girl. He goes up to the right floor. He enters the apartment. He undresses the girl. He touches her. He experiences ecstasy from her helplessness, from her fear, from the realization that he, here, is an absolute master. But the girl screams. She struggles. Her screams alarm the neighbors. Oleg panics. He runs away. This is the first sexual crime. The girl tells her mother. The mother tells the police. But in 1991, in Togliatti, the police were overwhelmed with drug cases, weapons cases, murders. A robbery of a minor received little attention. But for Oleg, this was a revelation. He realized what real power is. Not stolen money, not a stolen ring, but human suffering, human fear, human helplessness. Part 3. Series of assaults 1992 to 1995. Phase of systematic sexual assaults. From this moment, Oleg Rylkov changes completely. No more robberies, no more searching for money or things. His goal, now only one: children. Slams the door. Then, threats. A knife. If you scream, I will kill you. Then, undressing. Examination. Rape. Usually not just once. Sometimes twice. Sometimes 3 times during one encounter. Then, departure. Calm. Methodical. The girl remains in shock. She is afraid to tell. She fears that she will be blamed. She fears ridicule. She fears that she won't be believed. According to official data, during the period 1992 to 1995, Rylkov committed more than 37 rapes. According to unofficial data, perhaps there were 50, 60, or even more, because many victims never came forward. Psychology of the hunter. Why does Oleg choose specifically children? To this question he will later answer during interrogation. I know that they won't go to the police. I know that they will remain silent. I know that no one will believe them. This is the perfect victim. This is the motivation of the maniac. Not sexual arousal primarily, though that too, but mainly the feeling of impunity. The feeling that he is all-powerful. The feeling that he can do whatever he wants. And every new day of hunting for Oleg is a day of adrenaline rush. A day of feeling power. Why they didn't catch him? To this question there is a simple answer. The system was not prepared. 1991 to 1995 in Russia, this is a time of chaos. State collapse. There are no computers, no unified fingerprint database, no internet. No way to connect crimes into one case. Each crime report is processed separately. Each is examined separately. And when one victim tells about a man with red hair and another tells about a man with black hair, no one understands that this is one perpetrator. In the Avtozavodski sector of Togliatti, one operational department operated. In this department were several young investigators, overloaded with cases, who didn't know how to work with electronics, who didn't know how to analyze data. The system was not prepared for such a maniac. Family crisis of 1995. 1995, July. Oleg's life in the family, completely destroyed. Yekaterina has long suspected something. His strange interest in their daughter, his nighttime absences, his strange returns. She decides to leave, to divorce, to take their daughter and start life anew. And at this moment, Oleg is beaten up on the street. 3 young men beat him. Perhaps for money. Perhaps just like that. Perhaps there was some conflict. A broken jaw, bleeding, opens, severe head trauma. In the psychiatric sense, this is a critical moment. Oleg loses his last anchor to normalcy. He loses his last social inhibitor. Depression, alcohol, a constant feeling of humiliation. And in this state, he becomes even more dangerous. Domestic violence. After the beating, Oleg becomes violent at home. In December 1995, he beats his wife, Ekaterina, multiple times. First, with strikes, then with full physical violence. Then he commits forced sexual intercourse with her. The same thing is repeated several times, in April 1996, in May 1996. Ekaterina can't take it anymore. She leaves. She takes their daughter, and she divorces him. Oleg is left alone. And here, psychologically and emotionally, he severs the last threads connecting him to society. He is alone, No one controls him. No one is watching him, and he can allow himself everything. Part 4. Murders. Transition from assault to murder. What makes a maniac transition from rape to murder? Apparently for Rylkov, this was progressive desensitization. Rapes no longer gave him enough adrenaline. He needed more pain, more suffering, more power. And the only way to get all of this is murder. At trial, Oleg will later explain, after the first murder, there was inner pleasure, so to speak. Something kept pushing me. This is an honest admission by the maniac. First murder, August 1993. August 1993. Although this could be earlier, the exact date is unknown. Late evening. The bank of the Volga, the outskirts of Togliatti, in the Port Pozyolok area. Oleg meets a woman. No one will ever know who she is, perhaps a prostitute, perhaps just a stranger. He starts a conversation. He offers to walk to a more secluded place. They go to the Volga, to the bank, to a place where no one will ever see. And there, Oleg pounces, strikes with fists, strikes with feet, multiple strikes, until loss of consciousness, until bleeding. Then, strangulation, with his hands, pressure on the neck. The woman dies, her body dragged into the river. This is the first murder. Rylkov remains calm. He goes home. He goes to sleep. The next day he goes to work. At Autovaz, no one notices anything strange. Second murder, January 1994. January 1994. Mira Street, Togliatti, a residential apartment building. Oleg sees an open apartment door. He carefully enters. A woman is sleeping on the couch, middle-aged, alone. He goes to the kitchen. He looks for rope, twine, something he can use to bind. He finds clothesline. He cuts it into pieces. He returns to the room. He throws the rope over the sleeping woman. She wakes up. She resists. She screams. Rylkov grabs her, a strong struggle. Then, a knife. He goes to the kitchen. He takes a large knife. He returns. He strikes. One blow after another, at least 10 strikes. 3 wounds to the neck. The woman bleeds. She suffers. She dies in agony. Rylkov takes her wallet, money. He leaves. He leaves fingerprints. But the police don't analyze them, because there's no equipment, because there's no time. Third murder, March 1994. March 1994. Rylkov tries to approach a small girl on the street. He starts talking to her, but a passing woman sees this. She notices something strange. She intervenes. She saves the girl. Rylkov cannot deal with the girl, but his anger, his rage, it explodes. He follows the rescuer. He watches her. He learns where she lives. And one night, he breaks into her apartment. With a stick, he breaks a window. He enters. He attacks the sleeping woman. He strikes with the stick, multiple strikes, on the head, on the body. He knocks her to the floor. With the same stick, he compresses her neck. Strangulation. The woman dies. Rylkov calmly leaves. Fourth murder, August 1994. August 1994. A young woman is killed, or perhaps a teenager. Exact information is unknown. What is known is that the murder was especially brutal. Multiple knife wounds, and, most importantly, Rylkov begins to cut out organs. Eyes, ears, tongue, sexual organs. Why? This is a component of sadism, no longer connected to sexual arousal in the full sense. This is a component of collecting, a component of preserving trophies. Psychiatrists would call this compulsive behavior against the background of sadistic arousal. Growing confidence of the maniac. By 1994, Rylkov understands that he can do what he wants. No one catches him. No one even suspects him. The police don't connect the murders. The system doesn't work. And this gives him confidence. Confidence turns into cruelty. Cruelty turns into narcissism. He begins to indulge himself with the idea that he is above the system, that he is smarter than the police, that he is uncatchable. Part 5. Last Victims and Capture. Murder with a Witness, 1996. 1996, mid-year. Rylkov breaks into an apartment where a brother and sister live. They are minors. He kills the girl with an axe. The boy escapes. He runs out of the apartment. He screams. He cries for help. This is the first time there is a living witness. The boy sees the killer's face. He sees his appearance. He describes him to neighbors, to police officers. Based on this description, a composite sketch is created. For the first time in all these years, the maniac's face becomes known. Murder of Polina Parkova, July 20th, 1996. July 20th, 1996. Oleg comes to visit acquaintances. They have a daughter, 8-year-old Polina Parkova. He offers the girl to go for a walk. The mother agrees. He takes Polina to an abandoned bunker on the territory of a military base. There he deals with her. Rape, multiple knife wounds, cutting out organs, dismemberment, and, most importantly, witnesses. On Topolinaya Street, several people see Oleg with the girl. They see his appearance. They see the direction he goes. When the body of Polina is found, torn, mutilated with multiple injuries, the witnesses tell about their observations. For the first time, there appears a live chain. For the first time, they search for a specific person. And almost simultaneously, identification. Oleg Rylkov, sheet metal worker at Autovaz. Quiet, calm guy, never stood out. His photograph is distributed to the police. His description is circulated throughout the city. Oleg understands. The hunt has begun. Last Days of Freedom, August 1996. Oleg tries to hide, but where? The city is small. He is known. His face has been seen by millions of people. He continues to go to work. He falls into the sights of operatives. At the market, he is detained for attempting to pay with a counterfeit note. He calls himself by a false name, Yashchenko. They take a signed statement from him not to leave. They release him, but soon the fraud is discovered, and Oleg comes to a summons to the prosecutor's office, hoping that he will be released. He is not released. Interrogations and Confessions. During interrogations, Rylkov is calm. He admits to the crimes, in detail, without remorse. He tells the investigator about each victim. He describes how he chose, how he planned, how he acted. The investigator notes, Rylkov recalled the crimes with pleasure. His voice changed when he described the moment of murder. It seemed that he was experiencing ecstasy. To the question, why, Rylkov answers, highest pleasure, so to speak, a feeling of absolute power over the body, over life, over the death of the victim. This is the peak of pleasure. This is the admission of the maniac. This is an honest admission of his psychological state. Psychiatric evaluation. Psychiatrists conduct an evaluation. Conclusion: Oleg Rylkov is absolutely sane. No mental illness. No disorders in the sense of schizophrenia or paranoia. But he exhibits multiple sexual deviations, sadism, narcissism, absolute lack of empathy, complete inability to feel remorse, compulsive behavior connected to violence. This is a psychopath, a person who is born without the ability to love, to sympathize, to pity, a person who knows that his actions are wrong but is indifferent to this, because he has no inner moral compass. His morality is the pursuit of pleasure and nothing more. Part 6. Trial and Sentence. The Trial. February 1998. Court. A closed trial because most of the victims are children. In the courtroom, the judge, the prosecutor, the lawyer, Oleg Rylkov, witnesses, and silence. Absolute silence. Because this story is too horrible to cry about. Last words. At trial, Rylkov asks to be given the floor, and he says, "I plead guilty. I committed everything I am accused of. The only thing I want to say, I do not regret. I could regret if I understood that it was wrong, but I don't understand. For me, it was pleasure, pure pleasure." The hall freezes. Even the judge, hardened by judicial practice, feels a chill. The sentence. Sentence: death by firing squad. 12 murders, 37 rapes, robberies, thefts, torture. Altogether equals death by firing squad. But in 1997, Russia signs a moratorium on capital punishment. The sentence is commuted to life imprisonment. Part 7. Life in prison and final reflection. Black Dolphin Oleg Rylkov is sent to IK6, Black Dolphin, the most strict prison in Russia. Orenburg region, a prison for life-sentenced inmates, the most dangerous offenders. Here live people who committed the most brutal crimes. Here Oleg meets those like himself. Here he is not alone. New confessions. Even in prison, Rylkov continues to submit confessions. He reveals new crimes. He clarifies details of old cases. He helps to close unsolved murders. But most importantly, he reveals even more brutal details. For example, that he didn't just kill, he tortured. He enjoyed the victim's suffering. I remember every moment of my victim's torment. This is my cinema, my reality, which is real, unlike the rest of life, he writes. Narcissism in prison. What psychologists note who work with Rylkov in prison is his deep narcissism. He petitions for release. "I have been reborn," he says. But everyone knows this is a lie, because several years later he petitions again and again, because he enjoys being the center of attention. Because every new trial, every new confession is an opportunity to feel power again. Power over the system, power over people, power over society, which watches him and trembles with fear. What happened to society? Rylkov's murders shocked Togliatti. Years later, people still remember the fear that gripped the city. Parents stopped letting their children go unsupervised. Schools installed video cameras. Social services introduced new protocols. The police reformed their data collection system. Society realized evil can be nearby. It can be in the next apartment. It can be your colleague. Conclusion. This was the complete story of Oleg Rylkov. The story of a maniac who lived among us. The story of how society missed the opportunity to stop him at an early stage. The story of the psychology of crime. The story of a psychopath. Oleg Rylkov. This is not made up. This is a real person. This is a real story. He lives He breathes. He sits in prison. And sometimes he writes letters. Letters in which he remembers his victims. And these letters, this is a direct window into the world of a psychopath. A world where the pain of others is pleasure. A world where power is the only thing that matters. A world that to us is foreign, horrible, incomprehensible, but which for Oleg Rylkov is the only world he knows. Thank you for your attention. This was the channel Red Archive. Remember the victims. Remember their suffering. Remember that evil can live next to us. And be careful for your children, for your loved ones, for those who are near you. Until we meet again.